Hey, this is Manage Your Damn Money with Ben and Malcolm. We are here live, as we always are on a Monday. This is the show where we trade in personal financial advice for entertaining conversations about money. How's it going, Malcolm? What's going on with you?
I'm doing good, man. It's another Monday.
Another Monday, another Money Monday, as we always say. Amazing show today. We're talking about making a career change and the tools and resources to help you do it. We went to an event recently where there were people interested in learning how to code. Right?
Which is like the new wave.
The new wave is coding, and by coding we mean like engineering and creating apps and stuff like that. And it got us thinking, like, how do people go about making a transition from one career to another, especially if you don't want to like have to go to college again,
right,
or figure out what you're doing, you know, to learn the new skills. How do you make the transition? So we're talking about that today with our guest, Miss Tori Partridge. She's a business owner and the CEO and founder of Cherry Blossom Creative. So we're excited to have her on. She actually made an incredible career transition. She went from working in war zones to picking out fonts.
As plain as you're making it. That's what's interesting about it. Like,
so we're gonna actually talk to her about how she did it and how she made the transition. But before we get into that, crazy for me, I just got back from Greece.
And you look like you've been out in the sun.
I look like I've been in the sun?
Yeah.
Got a little tan, got a little chocolate. It was amazing, dude.
Yeah.
It was great. A couple things going up. It's a little bit of the experience. It was great.
You guys have been all over my social media for the last week, so I know you had a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is almost maybe the picture you're looking at.
And you fulfilled your lifelong dream.
I think this is close to the lifelong dream. For those who are listening, it's a picture of me with my shirt off. I'm a little cut. It's early in the vacation before the pita bread and hummus and all that took over.
But tell them why you needed this picture at this moment in life.
I need this picture because every child, when they get older, they flip through the photo album and they see that one picture of their father of when their dad was all still cut up and still had it together before the pot belly set in. And so I needed this picture to go on record so that when I'm 45, my kids can look back and say, well, dang, Daddy, you had it.
Call that the pre-fell off phase.
The pre-fell off phase. Max making sounds in the background. But it was an amazing trip. Something I'm really thankful that I invested in, and happy to be back on earth and land that I know. But it was a really great trip. So I'm just real thankful for that. But as we always do on Manage Your Damn Money, before we get started into the show's topic, we want to do headlines. Interesting thing that we're kind of audibling this week. This happened like yesterday, right? When did you find out about it?
Last night.
Last night.
Yeah.
So what happened?
So I just happened to be on. So it happened last night, and I kind of saw the buzz. Apparently, folks were DMing Nicki Minaj or messaging her on Twitter in general,
right,
asking her about paying their student loans,
right,
and she herself was, at the helm of her Twitter feed. It wasn't an intern,
right,
and she responded to someone and said, "Sure, I'll pay, a part of your student loans," because the girl was lamenting basically that she didn't have enough money to finish her semester, or she didn't have enough money to go back next semester or something like that.
Right.
And so Nicki Minaj said, I'll step in, I'll write a check for you to go to school. And I was like, okay, cool, whatever, just Twitter buzz. And then all of a sudden I'm looking on like CNBC, and then I think this one that we posted came up on Market Watch, and I was like, wait, this is real. Like, she's actually out here cutting checks.
Yeah,
like, there's like 3 people supposedly who she stepped in and either bought them books,
right,
paid their room and board, or cleared their debt to their school so that they could go back to school next year, which is kind of cool.
Right. Nicki Minaj, I need you to call 626-216.
Are you allowed to give your phone number out to another woman after you're married? Even if
let's stay focused here.
Okay.
Let's stay focused here.
Okay.
But yeah, Nicki Minaj. So a couple of tweets actually that I'm reading from the story that you mentioned on Market Watch. Nicki Minaj tweeted, "Show me straight A's that I can verify with your school, and I'll pay it. Who wants to join that contest?
Right.
Dead serious. Should I set it up?" And then she went on to say, "If you give me a 4.0, then I'll keep my end of the bargain." So she wanted to see people who were like high, achievers in school,
which I can appreciate.
Absolutely, she's keeping it about the academic achievement. And then people started hitting her like directly, and apparently like she said she's at least scheduled to pay for a few people.
Yeah.
Which is pretty incredible. A pretty incredible act of celebrity generosity.
So the interesting thing to me, the article from Market Watch that we were looking at that I noticed took a completely different approach and started talking about how that tells you just how screwed up the student loan debt, however many trillion, like $2 trillion or something that it is now.
Right.
That, it's way too high when celebrities are out here paying off people's student loans.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the complete opposite perspective to have, right? Like,
you think it's a good thing and a great story.
It's an awesome thing that Nicki Minaj is not so self-consumed like we like to assume that all of our, celebrities are.
Right.
That she understands just how outrageous student loans can be,
Absolutely.
how burdensome student loans can be.
Right.
But then also that's how she engages with her fans. It's not just, a quick one-liner on Twitter and then I go back to doing what I'm doing and have no real impact on your life like Chrissy Teigen.
Why you?
She's one of my favorite Twitter personalities just because of her one-liners.
Absolutely.
But then also at the same time, like she cuts a little deep sometimes.
Absolutely. I mean, but it does really show the Market Watch story that we were looking at. It says over the past few decades, state and local governments have pulled back on funding for public colleges. And then at the same time, Pell Grants and money for federal government loans that are provided to low-income students are like at an all-time low and have plummeted. So it's kind of interesting. Like, it is an amazing way to engage with fans and it's an amazing story. But at the same time, it shows just how like kind of semi-broken the higher education system is in terms.
I don't think you can even say semi.
It ain't okay. I was being nice.
Like, the word hyperinflation is an understatement when it comes to paying for college.
Right. Right.
So, as we sit across the street from a university here in DC, that's 40,000 plus a year.
Absolutely.
Like, I can't imagine what that same school will be by the time, I have kids who need to go off to college.
We probably will have figured out something else altogether aside from what college actually is now. Right. It'll be home college. And then real quick, just so people know, outstanding student loan debt now stands at $1.4 trillion.
Jeez.
And more than 1 million borrowers defaulted on loans last year. So that's kind of quick snapshot of what student loan debt is in the United States of America now. Shout out to Nicki Minaj for doing her part to kind of alleviate the situation. We're going to take a really quick break in a minute, but before we go to break, Malcolm, do you think other celebrities are going to be like, because really this is kind of like an advertisement for...
It is and it's not. Like, so here's why I say that. Nicki Minaj is a big enough celebrity that she probably makes, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 million dollars a year at this point.
Right.
She doesn't really need to pretend to be a good person to get people to buy her music.
That's true.
You know what I mean? It's not like she's on her way up. If she hasn't plateaued, she's on the back nine of her career.
Right.
So it's not one of those things where she's just doing this to gain some support and have people like her. Seems like just based on what I've read from it, she just legitimately was like, yo, I want to help out.
Absolutely.
Which is really cool to me, especially for somebody who hasn't themselves been to college.
Right.
Like, to still understand how big of a deal that is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Nicki Minaj doing her part to alleviate the student loan debt crisis in the United States of America. Shout out to Nikki Icky. Nikki Icky. But we're going to take a really quick music break. We're going to hear another music track from our in-house producer, Mr. Beats by Beeman. And when we come back, we'll actually talk about what people can do, speaking of college and how expensive college is, making a career change and the tools and resources to help you do it without necessarily going back to, a traditional college. So we're going to take a real quick break and we will be right back. Welcome back to Manage Your Damn Money with Ben and Malcolm. Having a very interesting conversation on this episode, making a career change and the tools and resources to help you do just that. As I mentioned at the top of the show, you and I recently attended an event about web development, the web development career space, aka engineering or coding. The event featured 3 women who had taken different paths to become coding professionals. The people in attendance were incredibly varied, some just starting out as young professionals, and then there were some who were like in the game professionals who've been there 15 years, right, who are looking for a way to make an adjustment to how they were making money. There was one guy who was an architect or was in the architecture business and was just looking for something completely different. So this got us thinking, how many of us millennials start out in one career path, but eventually decide that it's time to switch over to another track? How do we do this, and what are the steps to doing it in a way that's effective and efficient?
It's kind of interesting when you think about talking about millennials who are 35 to 22 or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And then you think about the fact that we're even talking about needing to make a career change within that gap, right? So for all those folks out there having a quarter life crisis, right, who are like, I can't believe I've been doing this for 5 whole years. And now I'm ready to completely pivot into something else.
Right.
Then this show is for you.
Right.
Because there's plenty of certifications and specializations and whatever else you can get short of having to get a master's degree or MBA or whatever to make that switch. Sure.
Absolutely. And we actually found a story came through from my Medium emails that I get every morning. It was a piece that said how I went from zero to San Francisco, or A0 to San Francisco software engineer in 12 months. It was a May 1st piece by Sean Smith on Free Code Camp, posted on a Medium, which recounted how he went from working at a rock climbing gym in Tennessee to becoming a software engineer in San Francisco. Sean went to college but dropped out after losing interest. He worked at the gym for 2 years until committing to learning code in 2016. Sean then enrolled in an online learning platform called Free Code Camp and utilized the open source platform, programs and resources available online to teach himself to code. And then Sean kind of actually went through some statistics at the end where he looked at the total applications that he put in, and it was like 192 total job applications, and then 17 interviews he got, and then he got some like take-home code challenges that was like 6. Then he had like 3 total on-site interviews, and then he got 1 offer. So it was like 192 total job applications, and all the way down to like 1 offer from 3 on-site interviews.
I like that he broke down the numbers like that too. I think it was like 275,000 hours or something like that that he recorded that he had to put in.
Absolutely.
To be able to actually have
right.
Like how much he recorded of himself,
right,
putting in to get it done,
right.
Which was interesting. So all of that you said, however many hours he put in, plus, or maybe it was 25,000 hours. I said 250, but 25,000 hours and then 17 projects and so on and so on,
right,
all to land 1 job,
right.
Like, that's pretty significant once you funnel it all the way down. You get halfway through that process, you go, I've been on 10 interviews and nothing has come up. I'm ready to give it up.
And it was interesting because all the projects that you're mentioning are like the code things he practiced to actually become good at coding. All that was an investment in the future of what his new career was supposed to be.
Right.
Meaning also it was all done free.
For free.
So
I will say in full disclosure, the whole time I'm reading this column about the guy telling his story, and he's telling about all these different places he's moved to, and he packed up his car, and all of a sudden he's in Seattle, and then he's in Oregon, and blah blah blah. And I'm thinking, like, where is he living this whole time?
Right.
How's he feeding himself?
Yeah.
And so he didn't
answer that
whether
question.
he was eating peanut butter jelly sandwiches all day every day for this year that it took to get his life turned around,
right,
or if he had a sponsor somewhere, or exactly what the case was. But nonetheless, it sounds like he was putting in some significant effort.
And that's the number one thing I think with it. However you go about making the career change, whether it's through online platforms, which we'll talk about in a bit, there is certainly an investment, which leads me to my question for you specifically. You had a career change, Malcolm. It was at the very beginning of like when you became an adult, I guess,
sure,
a working professional. But talk to us a little bit about how you became a licensed financial advisor and how that happened and how you knew like this was the investment that I'm going to make.
Sure. I mean, so I was in a similar fulfilled in the sense that, I was working as a sales manager. And so, I had at least a little bit of a track into being used to talking to people, being used to dealing with numbers.
Right.
And so I had a slight entree into it. And then obviously I studied business in college. And so I had econ classes and accounting classes and things that were relevant.
Right.
But at the same time, it was just one of those things where I looked and saw how far I felt like I had gone as far as I could take it.
Okay.
Where I was. And I just, it got frustrating. And I said, you know what, something's got to give.
Right.
So if that means that I have to go do something that means I'm going to be extremely uncomfortable because, growth is uncomfortable. So anytime you go learn something new or take in something new, it's going to hurt a little bit.
Right.
And it did.
Right.
But at the same time, it was for the better.
Right.
Because I looked at it and said, I know what I'll get out of this if I continue on the way I am for the next 30 years.
Right.
I'm willing to take that risk.
Okay.
And I think that's what's key, being willing to take that risk.
And without saying like the actual company that you did it with, what kind of program was it that you went through?
Well, it was an intensive training program where, you have 7 weeks to pass your first licensing exam, which is extremely ridiculous. Like an 8-hour test.
You better be good at math, it sounds like.
Good at math, good at reasoning, good at memorization, all kind of different stuff. So it's like 2 semesters of business classes squeezed down into 7 weeks worth of studying, all on a 300 question exam that lasts about 8 hours.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. But I mean, at the same time, it lets you know, kind of to the point of the guy who wrote the article, it lets you know how serious you are about making this change.
Absolutely. That's
but
real.
as you've heard me say often, average is going to be right there around the corner.
Right.
So if you ever decide, you know what, I'm tired of chasing waterfalls and I want to go back to the rivers and the lakes that I'm used to, average will be right there waiting for you around the corner.
Right.
So why not take a couple shots?
Absolutely, absolutely. And then that's kind of like the anecdotal, but the actual tangible things, various careers and tools and resources to help you make the switch. We kind of went through and looked at some things. Obviously, we know that it used to take a person having to learn a trade or having to go to college to find their expertise, and then you stick with that expertise for like 45 years, and then you retire. That's kind of like the traditional American, process. But with new technologies, programs, and online resources, the bar to changing careers has definitely lowered, making it easier for those who are curious and those who are serious, giving them the ability to explore and invest in a career change without the heavy cost of a new college or a 2-year vocational program. A couple of things that we looked up just to kind of point people in the right direction if they don't have any idea. Something that you and I both have used, Udemy.com, which is an online learning platform which is aimed at professional adults who want to add new skills to their resume or explore new passions. So like we both took a course or have bought a course on Udemy for like $10, which was like an MBA course. You finished it, didn't you?
Yeah.
You finished it. I'm still in like module 3 of like 12. But my plan is to.
Now I'm gonna send you wake up calls. I didn't know you were that far behind.
I'm slipping. But that's a place where a lot of people put up different kinds of courses, I guess you could call them, where you can learn different skills. And then also when it comes to implementing some of those new skills, some popular websites, specifically TaskRabbit and Fiverr. Fiverr. It's Fiverr. Okay, Fiverr. Both are online and mobile marketplaces matching freelance labor with local demand, allowing consumers to find immediate help with everyday and professional tasks. And that would be helpful in like what? Like developing like a client list, or like you've done this for these people, so on and so forth.
Dude, like there's so many. As we were reading through this, and I'm like getting excited about all these careers I'm not about to transition to. Like the fact that I can, for $800, go learn how to install solar panels on people's roofs. Like, so you think about like the folks that, so right now a really in-demand job that used to be popular and honorable is auto mechanic.
Okay.
But apparently people our age don't want to be auto mechanics. Like, you see, I saw an ad. I was at a dealership the other day. I saw an ad. They have 4 weeks paid vacation and 4-day work weeks for auto mechanics. And they can't get anybody to fulfill the roles because nobody wants to be on their feet all day, every day.
Right.
Blah, 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 blah. Right. So I'm thinking a lateral move from that is the guy putting or the girl putting solar panels on people's roofs, because as we move to solar energy and it becomes more popular and we get to a new administration that's not determined to
Eventually,
climate change,
eventually,
then it becomes a real viable prospect, and they make legitimate money,
right?
Installing solar panels, $800 to go learn how to install solar panels.
There you go, and there are plenty more in that vein. Where if you just learn something real basic, you'll have like a new trade, and it's not really that huge of an investment. As you mentioned before, all the rage, such that we can't even point out one. There are tons of programming, engineer, or web coding boot camps out there, both free and pay for, that can help you break into like the app web development space. So that's also an interesting one because a lot of people are like adding that skill to what they do.
The most popular one was the coding. And I think the what I took away from it that I didn't realize initially was you don't have to graduate from college to break into the coding world.
You don't have to have any kind of, I think that's one place where it's not kind of, well, do you have a master's degree? Do you have a bachelor's degree? It's just simply like, do you know how to code and how good are you?
And how many projects have you completed?
How many projects?
Terminology at that event. See?
There you go. And that's a really big deal. In a minute, we're gonna take a real quick break, but before we do, we're gonna rattle off a couple more, and then we're gonna have Tori Partridge on to talk about her business called Cherry Blossom Creative. And she was somebody who had a crazy career, which she'll talk about a little bit, before she opened her creative services company. A couple more that I found on an old Money story from 2015, Money Magazine. Project management managers earn like on average annually like $89,000,
and that's
a year
across the whole U.S. So
and that's across absolutely
for us that are on two separate coasts. It's
and there's apparently like project management certifications you can get.
Right.
So that's like just managing any old project through and to completion. Then there was another one that I have heard of, but never like really read anything about, becoming a Microsoft certified IT professional. And this is said to earn you up to $16,000 more than someone who doesn't, like if you're in the IT space.
Right.
So like a Microsoft certified IT professional is kind of like, I guess, getting all the different areas down packed, like not just you use PowerPoint occasionally.
Well, I mean, you're still tech support, but it's like Microsoft has now put their stamp on you.
Right.
So that means that, you are something special as far as tech support is concerned, because all these corporations have not migrated to Mac. They're all still PC based. So.
Absolutely. And then the last one that we have here is exercise physiologist. Apparently there's some certifications there to become an exercise physiologist. I'm not quite sure what that is, but you can apparently, if you get the certification, tack on about $4,500 more than what a person who doesn't have that certification has. So there's a lot of different things happening there. Real quick before we go to break, do you think we're going to see, like you kind of mentioned it, do you think the millennial generation is moving towards like this thing where you move back and forth between these careers a lot more fluidly?
Well, as it becomes easier to try stuff out, then you'll see more folks trying stuff out.
Absolutely.
Like, as you mentioned, our guest that we'll have on in a few minutes, she didn't intend to get into the business that she was in, and then all of a sudden, I got a viable business, and why not try this thing out?
Absolutely.
But I think, like I mentioned before, if you try to pivot to a new career, you get 2 years into it and you realize it didn't work, well, it cost you $1,000 to go get a certification to find out it didn't work. Like, that's not a high barrier to entry.
That's not too big of a deal.
Right. But then, so I think also we're starting to see folks put a little bit less stock in being in the field that you initially went to college for.
Man, yeah,
that used to be a really big thing where folks had it in their mind that if I went to school to be a psychologist, I've got to be a psychologist.
I'm trying to let that go myself now.
So you know exactly what I mean. Like you see people a lot of times that get really stuck in their mind that I can't look outside of the field that I'm in. Well, now it's a lot easier to do it, because you can go get a certification in, being a physiologist, and now you're a personal trainer who, works with celebrity clients and makes $15 million because you've been on Oprah. Like stuff just happens like that. You know what I mean? So
absolutely. Real quick before we go to break, we want to remind people you're listening and watching Manage Your Damn Money with Ben and Malcolm. Of course, we want to remind folks, if you're not already, please subscribe to our channel on iTunes or on SoundCloud on both platforms. I think it's called Apple Podcasts now. On both platforms, please search Manage Your Damn Money and subscribe. And you can also follow myself and Malcolm on social media. What's your social media, Malcolm?
At at Malcolm on Money.
And then myself is at MYDM1. So we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to talk to Tori Partridge about how she went from working in war zones to picking out fonts. We will be right back. We are back here on Manage Your Damn Money with Ben and Malcolm. We are joined here by Miss Tori Partridge. Tori,
hey, how's it going?
It's going well. How are you?
Good.
I'm doing well. This is my first like video podcast experience.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear it.
Welcome to 2017.
Living in the future, guys.
Right. This is the future. Of course, we've been talking. You've been hearing the conversation because you've been here in studio with us.
Yes.
We've been talking about making a career transition. First, before we get into that, why don't you tell us about Cherry Blossom Creative, what you guys do, and what your work is on kind of like a day-to-day, week-to-week basis?
Yeah, for sure. So I run a creative studio called Cherry Blossom Creative. Okay. I started it 5 years ago. We focus mainly on, I would say, graphic design, illustration, print design. Oh, you got my logo. Look at that. That's so nice.
2017, I see.
You guys are dragging me into the future. This is so great. And I have a small storefront in Shaw now where we sell prints that I make. I have a line of neighborhood maps of DC. That's just what most people know us for.
Those are the DC maps with the colors and the different regions of DC.
Yes.
Right.
And then we also work with clients all over the city on things like branding and identity design, marketing materials, a lot of graphic design, a lot of infographics, but then all the way up to doing things that are a lot more big and a lot more environmental, like murals, installations.
Right. Excellent.
All kinds of fun stuff. If
cool
it's
stuff.
Like creative and tangible, we'll get our hands into it.
Excellent. So the reason why we have you on is because you made a crazy transition. I remember like we went to coffee and you explained this to me and I was like, what the heck?
Yeah.
So tell people what you did before first. Give us like a real quick synopsis of that. And then we'll get into like how you when you thought like, oh, I'm gonna do something different and how you did it.
It's so funny because you guys, you were like describing this and you're like, Tori Partridge, who went from war zones to picking out fonts. And I was like, oh my God, like you make me sound like my life is so boring now. But like, it's actually like way more interesting
okay,
in
so
all sorts of ways. So we'll talk about that too. But, I went to school, for international relations and Arabic, and like Middle East studies. And in the same way that you were talking about, I was like, all right, this is my life now. Like, this is what I've signed up to do. This is what we get to do. So I started work in counterterrorism initially. My first job was actually like tracking terrorists online who were trying to build bombs and then helping people understand how those bombs were built. My Arabic vocabulary got like very bizarre and very specialized during that time. And then went from that to working for the Army for a group called the Human Terrain System, which is, they basically take people who have an academic background in the Middle East or in political science or sociology or economics and embed them with military units to help them get a better understanding of the mistakes that we're making, of like the actual conditions on the ground, of the political environment. And so I spent the entirety of 2010 in Baghdad in Iraq.
Wow.
Living on a base, living that life,
Right.
which it's so funny because it's now a thing that I tell people and they're like, oh my God, so fascinating. Wow.
It sounds intense.
It sounds, that was most of it. Like if you can manage it, like
Right.
universe,
Right.
don't deploy. Like, it's not actually like, I mean, obviously, like if you're serving our country, that's like a totally different thing. But like as a lifestyle choice, it's just like not. It's terrible. Like you're on a square mile. You've got
And
concrete
you
walls
couldn't leave
surrounded.
either.
You can't leave.
Right.
Especially as a young woman, like it was just not a very safe place for me to be. You're working day in, day out, like it's, 14, 16-hour days, like pretty much every single day of the week. And you're living in like pretty much perpetual fear of your base getting mortared, or at least I was. It was a bad summer, summer that I was there.
So you described a really vivid picture. In that picture, what was the moment like, I think I need to do something else? And when did you come to the conclusion that that something else was going to be making murals and being commissioned to be creative for people?
So I've never actually had a moment in my life that I could describe so closely as like an epiphany moment.
Okay.
Mostly I feel like people make these sort of like steady transitions between things. But it was actually, it's the middle of that summer where we were getting mortared pretty much every night. I know mortar, for those of us who don't know, is like basically a rocket that's being fired into the base with pretty imprecise measurements, so you don't actually know where it's going to fall.
Okay.
And we got mortared in the middle of the night. It was like 3 a.m, and all of us just like run out to the bomb shelters as soon as the sirens go off. And I'm sitting in this bomb shelter in my pajamas, in like my little shoes that I kept right by my doors just in case like this happened. And I'm like surrounded by like sandbags and concrete, and I'm like, what am I doing? like, hold on.
That was an epiphany.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, I was actually, I'd been thinking about heading back to grad school and like to do more of the same stuff, to do, like Middle East studies, to do like conflict development.
Right.
And I just couldn't bring myself to even apply for it.
Okay.
And that night, after we got the all clear, I headed back into my little like trailer that I was living in, and just took out my notebook, and I was like, what could I do if it wasn't this? Like, what could I do? And I just started writing down just careers. Like, it was everything. I was like, I could be a high school guidance counselor. Like, I could be, do you know what I mean? I was like, when I heard you guys talking about like installing solar panels, like it was that level of just like, okay, I'm like looking at my life.
Right.
I don't really want to be like hopping from war zone to war zone, or like dealing with people who only contextualize the world in the concept of threat, in the context of like, who is the bad guy? Like, how do we, stop that bad guy?
Right.
And, what could I do that is anything different? And all of a sudden, it was like my entire body was like on fire. I was just like, oh my God, like I could do something that like isn't this. It was like it had never occurred to me before that was even an option, that I could just do anything.
I think knowing what you don't want to do is probably half the battle. Like, seriously, once you let go of what it is that you're doing, or you really have that firm, this is what I don't want to be doing, then it makes it easier for everything else to open up to you.
I think it's also so hard when we spend so much of our time in kind of like the grind of everyday life, especially in DC. Like, I think that if I had not gone somewhere that was going to be as like sharp of a contrast to the life that I wanted as being deployed in Iraq, I probably could have seen myself just like sort of jumping from nonprofit to nonprofit, or from like government agency to government agency, like moving through my process and being unhappy, but not being so unhappy that I was like, you know what, screw this.
Definitely.
I'm out.
So how did you come to the creative agency, or even the idea of being creative and being paid to be creative?
One of the things that I still have that like piece of paper that I was writing all of those career options down on. It's a weird piece of paper, but like a lot of things that I was thinking about on there. But one of the things that I ended up circling just said creative professional.
Wow. Okay.
And I didn't really know what that meant, but I knew that I spent all of my free time reading design blogs. Like I knew that when somebody gave me the opportunity to like lay something out in one of our like super boring, super dry government reports, like
that was exciting.
I would pour my heart into it. I would stay late at the office.
Okay.
And one of the things that I did when I was in high school was I painted murals. It was just murals for kids. Like my mom was a pediatrician. She had me come into her doctor's office and paint some like murals of like jungles and like dolphins on the walls. And kids started hiring me to like do their houses. So I had this like flourishing micro business.
So the
as, like,
seeds
a
were
high
planted
schooler.
really early.
Yeah, these like weird little seeds were planted very early. And when I came back to DC, I was like, okay, my brain is like all scrambled from like being, in Iraq for a long time. Like I just need to do something to keep my hands busy. So I was like, all right, let's paint murals for kids. Like I've done this before. I know it makes good money. Like there's people who've got money in DC. Like I'm sure we could make this work.
Absolutely.
I have not painted a single mural for children since I started my children's mural painting business. Okay. But the first person that I gave a card to who called me back was Anne from Annie's Ace Hardware up in Petworth, which is a great hardware store. And my first project as a creative professional who was being paid to be creative was doing these like murals for the front of her store. And we can talk more about like the transition from like how it kind of went from that to something else. But it really just came out of me saying like, listen, like this is what I'm doing now. Like have a business card.
That's excellent.
Excellent. So one of the recurring themes on this show tends to be having a passion and then turning your passion into a side hustle.
Yeah.
And then turning your side hustle into a full-blown career.
Yeah.
So you are someone who has done that.
Sort of.
Which is the reason that Ben and I both, every time like the discussion comes up about what you've been able to do, it like I can't speak for Ben, but it blows my mind every time. But
speak for me, brother. Speak for me.
So talk for a second about sort of that initial realization. Like it's no longer a passion. It's no longer something I'm doing on the side. Now this is something I have to take seriously, and this is the way I'm going to feed myself. What was that process like?
So I started these like little creative projects. I'd knocked together a couple of websites for clients. I'd done this project for Annie's, and the Army came back to me and was like, hey, do you want to go to Afghanistan? We're going to give you a promotion and a raise.
Hey.
And I was
like the ex coming back.
I was like, hey. but when that happens with exes, I was like, it wasn't so bad, was it? Like we had good times together.
We had chemistry. We used to laugh.
Yeah, and
was it a big promotion? Like eyes dropping out of your head.
It was a lot more money, and I was making good money before too, and I was like, okay, well, I've got this like weird nascent idea that most of my friends are like, okay, Tori, you can do that. Nice. I remember my mom calling me up when I had first started this, and she was like, I was like, so I'm gonna start a mural painting business, and she was like, so you're just going to paint then? You're just going to paint forever.
Parents
my mom's British. I'm not doing that
British?
accent for like no reason.
Oh my goodness!
I just remember her being like,
you just made him break out his British accent.
Oh, should I not have done that? I'm sorry.
Oh my goodness, you've given me an excuse now.
Oh, that's racist.
Sorry.
So all of these people were just kind of like, okay, and I was like, can I even do this? And for 2 weeks, it was like, am I going to go to Afghanistan? Am I going to stay here? Like Monday, I'm going to Afghanistan. Tuesday, I'm staying here.
Right.
Wednesday, I'm going to like. It was awful, and I even went out there and interviewed. I went out to Kansas City and did like a mini training.
So what was like the moment?
You lost me at Kansas City. That's on my list.
Hold on, why?
A list of places he would never move. It's from the last show. Anyways, continue.
Listen, Kansas City, secretly awesome. Like really,
I'll take your word for it. Missouri's on my list.
Another store, another podcast.
So what was the moment?
Yeah, just like at one moment, I was like, all right, if we're gonna do this, like, I'm not going to do this. And like, when I came back for the first couple months, I was like managing a restaurant just to like really keep my hands busy. I'd always done service jobs, like sort of in between jobs. And I was like, if we're going to do this, we're going to really do this. Like, I'm not going to like bartend on the side. I'm not going to like, I don't know, dog walk. What do people do these days? Like, I was like, if we're doing this, and if I'm turning down a job to go to Afghanistan, like, we're really gonna do this. Like, this is 100%. Like, cut out your safety net. Go.
Right.
You know?
So when we walk in, you actually have an office in the Northwest DC area. It's like an office and storefront combined. When you walk in, or at least the last time I walk in the back in the office space or technical office space, there's like a bunch of like working fonts or like logos and things that you're working on, I imagine, for clients and things like that. Things that look like they were done in Photoshop and design programs, I assume. Correct?
Yes.
All right, excellent. So my question is, how did you, having not gone to school to learn any of those programs, having not really had any true training in how a creative process is supposed to work, how did you get the technical part down in terms of creating some of these things that you create?
So I often tell people that it was mostly by just being comfortable with being very, very bad at what I did for a couple of years. Okay. The actual software itself, there's so many different platforms to learn that kind of stuff. Right. My favorite one has been, I just found this out, it's formerly lynda.com, now LinkedIn Learning, I want to say. Like, LinkedIn bought lynda.com, which is, oh my God, Lynda is amazing. It's got these fabulous classes that are all about, you can do design, photography, coding, marketing, everything in that sort of like maker creative space.
There goes those online classes again.
Yeah, no, they really are amazing though. And actually, fun fact about Lynda, if you have a DC Library card, you can get access to their whole library for free.
Oh wow! Okay, there you go.
Yeah, that's like pro tip.
And then two, what would be like some real, like maybe top 2 or 3 things you would say to someone who's considering making a pivot in their career from something that they know and they've been wedded to and feel like they have to continue to do, but they're thinking about that thing that's kind of that burning desire to kind of move in this direction? Like, what would be your words of wisdom or advice for that person?
I think that like it's a little bit tough because the advice is so different each time that someone is making that move. You know, my good friend just moved from being a like PR professional and like working at an agency to then wanting to like go out on her own and make the total career change to be sort of like an independent consultant. And she had a ton of experience at that area. She already knew the landscape really well. So when she was like, let me just do this, I was like, yeah, girl, like, go, you know, like, you're going to make a lot more money and be a lot happier. So, like, please. But, you know, other times, like, I've heard people who are like, I'm going to start a clothing line and I have no experience in, like, the fashion industry and no connections. So I would say the biggest thing is to just, like, have some basis in what you're doing. Like, know a little bit about, like, the area that you're moving into and just have a really, really, really solid grasp on the startup costs of things. If you're going to be like starting your own business, especially.
Right. So with that in mind, though, I want to catch that the startup costs you mentioned for you pivoting into a business you had no business in the first place.
Yeah.
Like, what did it cost you to get started?
It cost me basically like a new laptop. I probably didn't even need the new laptop. I just wanted the new laptop. So a few $100. Yeah. Well, no, it's a Mac. Don't even get me started. Mac's cost. I don't even want to talk about it. Right. Apple, just like take all my money. Just have it. It's yours. But
still not as much as one would think traditionally when you talk about starting a new business.
One of the nice things about like sort of digital service oriented businesses, you guys did a lot of talk about like people who are getting into coding. It's the same thing. Have like a good laptop, like, and maybe a coffee shop to go to from time to time, like a Wi-Fi connection, business cards, like if you really need it. But mostly that stuff is sort of done online these days. I think that I had some savings built up for when I started the business, and that helped me sort of emotionally feel comfortable going into something where I was like, what if I lose money, you know?
Right.
But looking back on it now, there was never a point where I was in like the red.
Okay.
Like I didn't
Good for
actually
you.
need to dip into those savings at all.
Excellent.
But the fact that it was there, I
Okay.
would say, is really
Cool.
nice.
So we're gonna take a real quick break in a minute. So we want to thank you again. I got 2 quick questions that I want you to answer in like 30 to 45 seconds.
I'll make it happen.
So number one, how did you make the business part or figure out the business part of it? And then real quick, and then also where can people learn more about you and Cherry Blossom Creative if they want to find out?
I am a huge fan of the Small Business Resource Center at DCRA, as well as, if you're a lady, the Women's Business Center in DC. I did a fast track course through them, which taught me just an amazing amount of business basics. DC in particular has some really incredible resources for that. But if you live in another state, like just check out their like local Small Business Resource Center. There's so much free training available in business.
Excellent.
What was the second one?
Second question was, where do people learn more about Tori Partridge and Cherry Blossom Creative?
You can find us online at cherryblossomcreative.com
Very good.
for portfolio and also our online shop, and then on Instagram at Cherry Blossom HQ.
On the gram, Cherry
Yeah.
Blossom HQ.
It's our strongest channel.
Excellent.
We're
excellent.
visual people.
Excellent. Well, Tori, want to thank you for joining us here on Manage Your Damn Money. And we're going to take a real quick music break, hear another track from Beats by Beeman. But when we come back, Malcolm and I will wrap up the show. Thank you, Tori.
Yeah, thank you
Thanks so
guys.
much.
This was fun.
Excellent. We are back here on Manage Your Damn Money with Ben and Malcolm. Another great, fast-moving show, Malcolm.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty good.
Tori gave us some excellent insight and also perspective. You can't really go from 2 different places than in a war zone doing kind of contract, army military related work to doing creative services stuff.
And she didn't mention also that she has employees now, right?
Yeah,
this is a full-blown business, and she was being modest, but I'm going to brag a little bit for Tori real quick. Because going from 0 to,
Literally.
having no business, like I said, having no business in this business, because this isn't the thing you were planning on doing when you woke up the day before,
Right.
to actually having full-blown employees and, a 5+ year lease and a storefront and all those kind of things is a really big accomplishment. So.
Absolutely. Kudos to Tori Partridge and Cherry Blossom Creative. Shout out to all the wonderful people who work at Cherry Blossom Creative, because I think I've met a good portion of them. And I think the thing for me personally that I'm taking away from this episode is that you really, and this is something I'm working through myself, so I'm gonna bare my soul just a little bit. I'm about to testify just a moment. It really is these days, especially with the way that the economy is more and more structured in a way that you have to plan for uncertainty.
Right.
As we always say, the robots are coming. There's so many things that globalization play into you're not being able to rely on a particular job.
Right.
And so you really have to be comfortable in moving back and forth between these different spaces and places and making money. And I think Tori is just, again, a really excellent example of how you can slide back and forth and then also learn new skills and almost makes it imperative that you learn a secondary or third skill.
So you asked about the business part and how you master and maneuver the business part. Another key takeaway was having that savings, to the side that you can come to in case of a kind of moment. So living below your means is also part of that transition of making yourself from employee to employer overnight. There has to be some cash on the sidelines to kind of help cushion that that blow a little bit.
That's huge. That's huge. So we want to thank our listeners and viewers for tuning in once again to Manage Your Damn Money with Ben and Malcolm. We want to remind you that you can find us and subscribe or follow us on iTunes or now Apple Podcast. Just search Manage Your Damn Money and hit the subscribe button. And then you could also follow us on SoundCloud, soundcloud.com/Manage Your Damn Money. And then you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Manage Your Damn Money. And social media, what's your handle, Malcolm?
At Malcolm on Money.
And then you can find me at MYDM1.
And also, if you're in the DC area, check your local listings because we are now on TV.
Absolutely.
Monday nights at 10 o'clock. So.
Monday nights at 10, Channel 21 in the DC local area, and looking to put our product in other places too. So if you run a public television station and happen to run across this show, holler at us at info@manageyourdamnmoney.com. Until next week in the next show, we will see you later. Until then, be good with your money.
Peace.
Peace.